Yo, 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 what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about how PvP works and how it differentiates itself from some of the other kingdom builders out there while laying a good foundation for the potential that it still could even exceed and raise itself to. So we're going to be covering a couple different areas of PvP, but the biggest one I'm going to start off with is explaining that PvP in CoD is a bit more role-based than probably other kingdom builders that you've played before. There are also traditional true RTS elements that you'll find in Call of Dragons. The one I usually will go to, kind of the hybrid baby child, is if you've ever played a traditional RTS game, something like a StarCraft, a Warcraft, Command & Conquer, Age of Empires, etc. Company Heroes for my COH fam out there, Halo Wars for my console fam, Lord of the Rings 2, Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 2 on the console, that fam as well. Stuff like Tom Clancy's End War. But in short, COD to me is really like the love child of StarCraft 2 and Rome Total War, so to speak. And the reason being is because you have big individual legions, something similar to Total War, and then there's some StarCraft kind of true RTS elements that you'll find with things like on-field structures that you can build, and again, having it being a little bit more kind of role and not necessarily, I would say, full counter-based yet, where you're kind of running like that standard triangle where it's, you know, like infantry, what is it, like infantry air vehicles, right? Something to that effect, right? Where it's like infantry, what is it? Infantry does air, air does vehicles, vehicles does infantry. Something, just to give an example, right? Now, that'd be cool if there was something a little bit more into it, but anyways, I digress. So and I'm going to show you a couple videos too as well, just to really hammer home how the PvP in COD is different. And then we're also going to show you some things, some interesting tidbits here about artifacts and also the heroes themselves, just to, again, add more context and to give you some more dialogue surrounding this. Okay, so the first one I'm going to show you is actually going to be just some open field fighting, and this is actually going to be from a video that I did before. I'm just going to play it, and I'll do a little bit of explaining while we go. So this, you can see it. I'll pause for a moment. Well, it's okay if I don't pause really. But what you're seeing is range play, right? So you're seeing like these Lilias here. These are mages. These Nikos here. These are archers. Again, range. Magic has the farthest range. Archers have, they're very far. Archers are far. And then you have, let's see if we can get back into a little bit more fighting here. And then you have Cav, which is like Celestials then would be there kind of along that far range. And then you have the range Cav from Spring Wardens, which is the green faction. They actually have range, but the other two Cavs for Wilderberg and League of Order, they don't. That would be melee. And then, of course, infantry is melee. And so in this situation, right, and you'll, again, see a little bit. Let me see if we can show you guys a bit more here of, let's see if we're going to get, I know there's another fight that breaks out here. Let's see if I can show you this one. Here we go, cool. So again, another little small one, but what you're seeing here is, right, some of the units are being a little spread out. Some are being bunched and clumped. You'll even see moments where, like, as an example, right, so a little bit of positioning micro here from Exist 360 where he kind of moves his unit a little wider, probably because he doesn't want to be bundled up with the others. So again, taking advantage of that, that's something you're going to be noticing when you're playing, is that there is going to be a level of micromanaging that you're going to be doing while you're actually in the game. And that's one of the biggest differences, is that positioning is very important with how you're preparing yourself before a fight is engaged. You're also going to be seeing, or you may see, and or just participate in it, where you'll have, for example, infantry that will go in and they're kind of playing more of like a CC disruptor type role, right? They're not necessarily there to do a bunch of damage, but kind of almost, think of it like League of Legends. That's a really good example. So think of infantry like your tank. Think of Cav like your off tank, even though you could build infantry to be somewhat off tank. And then you're going to have, and Cav could actually be off tank / assassin. And then you have your Celestials, and those are probably something similar to like an off tank DPS, maybe kind of assassinish role. And then you have magic, which is your mage, and those are basically just magic DPS, and your archers, which are physical DPS. And so that's probably the easiest way to really describe how these things are set up. Now, let me hammer home and explain a little bit more why, even when you're trying to do something like a tier list as an example for things like artifacts or heroes, right? You can do them, but the fact is that the game is very compartmentalized with the types of roles and specific character sets or characteristics that you're going to have for heroes and artifacts. And I'm going to give you an example of this. So if I scroll in, and we're going to take a look at some artifacts here, just to, again, hammer the point home. So, and I'll be covering this in a future video, but there are, I believe it's 52 artifacts in total. Let me just make sure I have my numbers right here. It's either 52 or 53, I believe. So let's see here. So it's 53. So there's 53 artifacts in total. There are 7 marksmen, there's 9 infantry, 9 cav, 12 magic, got 1 flying, 3 gathering, 7 peacekeeping, a garrison, 1 garrison, 1 rally, and 3 mobility. That's mobility only. And that kind of breaks up your artifact distribution. What you'll notice there is that there is more, like magic has the most amount of artifacts, whereas flying has the least, and then marksman, right, would be the next least at that point. And so the idea is that you're not necessarily going to be running a marksman artifact on a magic hero, right? So this is why you kind of have to look at the artifacts and the heroes as their own types, like what group, what type do they fall into? And that's why when you're going out and you're conducting PvP and you're figuring out what Legion comps you want to run, what artifacts you want to put on those specific marches, right? These are all going to factor into that. Just like we touched on as well, right? When you're doing PvP, and I'll kind of show you and give you an example here on the field. I just have to find one. And probably this one would be the best to use. And we showed a little bit of this off before, but you'll see things on here like barricades as an example, right? These are essentially on-field support items that your alliance can build, and they're going to slow enemy units down while they're passing through them. You're also going to see things such as keeps, and I believe if they still have one up. So here's a keep, right? And if you're an enemy and you walk within the range of this keep, the keep will start attacking you, right? So these are kind of like bunkers, right? Mini strongholds, if you will. And these are cool things that you're able to do on the PvP side. But I really want to hammer this point home, which is that, and let me just, before I even get to that point, let's talk about heroes a little bit. So very similar with heroes, right? It's difficult to quantify, if not even qualitatively, the order, right, on heroes that you're saying, well, hey, I'm gonna put this one above that. Like I said, you could make tier lists. I mean, again, I've even done a video where it's, hey, here's the priority order for free-to-play legendary heroes that you should focus on. But I do preface quite a bit in that video and gives context beforehand so people understand what it is going in, because the main thing about PvP and CoD is that it is very subjective, meaning that it depends on what type of role you want to play. Maybe you're someone who just wants to do nothing but infantry, and you want to be that tank CC disruptor for your alliance. That's the thing about CoD's PvP, is that it's very team-oriented. It's not kind of like a solo YOLO dolo type situation where you're going to go out and you're always going to be soloing things, right? Or you're able to be that T5 player that's just going out there and wrecking face. You'll notice that the cap for that, the ceiling for that, is a little bit lower than those who maybe have played games like Rise of Kingdoms. And so the emphasis, and this is something we've even seen with updates that have been coming out so far. One example is not being able to build like forts all over the place. You have to build them on connecting to alliance flags, right? These are things that they want you to push as a team together in order to cover and make up land. And push flags. And then even with updates, for example, like not being able to attack cities when they're on alliance territory, right? You can really only kind of battle in the open field. And these are things they've done where you can just tell the direction the game is going in, is they want you to fight more as a team and as an alliance. And because of that, having specific roles where, again, my view always has been, since I started playing in Server 2, is that the game is going to transition and eventually get to some type of meta where you're going to see players running nothing but a specific type of heroes, artifacts, and legions. As I mentioned before, an example is you might run all infantry, right? So the thing is, there's not enough heroes in the game yet, right? You don't have 10 infantry, 10 archers, or 10 marksmen, 10 cav, 10 flying, 10 magic, or mages. You just don't have that right now. But eventually, when there are enough heroes, that is what you could see doing. People running 10 infantry for a full infantry march, running 10 flying for a full flying march, so on and so forth. That's really where I see the game going more in. Why? Because it's easier to micro a march of all the same type than it is to micro 5 different legions or 5 different marches within your legion or legion comps within your legions than it is, right, if you're just running all of the same one. Like, that's somewhat difficult if you have to run a mage, an archer, a cav, an infantry, and flying. One, because they interact differently, but then two, because they all have different ranges, right, that they're active skills and how close they have to be to actually do damage. So you're just kind of putting a lot more unnecessary burden on yourself. Now, yeah, you could make the argument it's probably easier to do it if you're online on a PC or laptop utilizing the PC client with a mouse and keyboard, but I don't think that it's that much of an extreme or any type of overwhelming advantage compared to doing it on mobile. But these are things that, again, I like about the PvP side of COD and what it brings to the Kingdom Builder scene. It's very different. I think the range play itself is just an extreme seller. Again, being able to use your artifact active skills, right, just adds another layer of strategic and tactical depth to the game that makes it that much more enjoyable. So if there's advice or something that you take away from this video, it's that my recommendation is to work your way to a point where you can try to set yourself up as more heroes are coming out to try and pick a specific group or type of play style that you want to do. Whether that's all infantry, if it's all flying, all mage, all magic, all marksman, all cav, or if you want to do an assorted thing, maybe you want to run 1 or 2 tanks and then 3 DPS, right? You want to run like a hybrid build. Like I said, the big takeaway here, or I should say one of the big takeaways, is that you should be fighting with your alliance, right? Even if, a smaller example, even if you're fighting with a few players in your alliance, right? There's nothing stopping one person from running all tank, and then the other people running all DPS, and one running all cav. I mean, that's really what I think is going to be the fascinating part of when we get to a point where we can see 5 legions all being ran with the same hero type, and then seeing how the alliances coordinate that. Very similar, like I mentioned before, if you're thinking about like a total war type game, right, where you're kind of having to look at theater of war and then micro and macro the landscape, based on where your marches or legions are at. So anyways, that I think for the most part covers it. I hope this at least gives any of the new players some insight into the PvP here in COD, how you can prepare yourself a bit, what are the expectations that you should have when you're coming in, being able to enjoy the ranged mechanic. I mean, even being able to hit people from an elevation. Obviously, there's no inherent advantages at the moment to that. But again, aesthetically, I'm sure it's pleasing, right? And again, I think there's things that they can do eventually down the road that will even enhance the PvP so much more than where it already is, being at a higher standard, right, compared to its contemporaries. So like I said, that I think covers it. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. So again, if you have any thoughts, comments, any questions, right, please let me know in the comments down below. And I always read everything, at least as much as I can, and then respond to as many as I'm able to. But again, I always love reading your thoughts. So again, let me know. That is going to be it for me. As always, until next time, your boy, I'm going to catch you later.